with Steve Sipple, Jake Sorensen, and Bill Bush from 6 to 9 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Men in Nebraska can be set in their ways, but they can also be quick to change their minds. Just 10 minutes can be enough to step back and rethink the life-ending decision of suicide. If you have a friend or family member who's struggling with depression, talk to them about temporarily storing their guns away from their home. Paid for by the University of Nebraska Public Policy Center. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here.
I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe, and is the best way to protect that legacy.
Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
This is your captain. We are going to be experiencing some slight turbulence. Please fasten your... Oh, hold on. Just got a video of my cat.
Imagine the pilot of an airplane was as confident as you are texting and driving. Seems kind of crazy when you put it like that.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back, race fans, to the finish line every Sunday night. I'm James Rowland. Join Bree Marie and me every Sunday from 7 to 8 p.m. on 93.7 The Ticket FM or theticketfm.com for the finish line. All the latest news for local and national motorsports, all in one place. 93.7 The Ticket FM.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids. First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. Next, I put it in reverse. Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Rosie's Sports Bar and Grill. Open for lunch and dinner at 1501 Center Park Road, just south of 14th and Highway 2.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com. On the internet. KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket. Welcome in to the Corner 3. Taking you around the arc of college basketball. From the NAAC to the Pac-12, the WCC to the SWAC. We cover it all now on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Austin Oerman.
Well, it's not the Corner 3. We're not just talking college hoops. We're talking a lot of things college sports. Welcome into Ticket Weekends. Austin Oerman with you here. Got the normal Saturday lineup for you coming your way throughout the rest of the day. Hard to not want to jump on air after the decision that was made official last night. That would be the House versus NCAA settlement. It did officially get approved by Judge Claudia Wilken, so there is a lot to go over. 402-464-5685. If you have comments, if you have questions, if you have reaction, we would love to get into it here throughout the course of the show. So, this whole House versus NCAA thing started, believe it or not, 5 years ago next month. We have been waiting on this process since July of 2020. That's when it was first settled. 59 months later, we have at least a little bit of resolution. Not perfect resolution, but we got a lot to go over when it comes to the House settlement. So, we'll go into the approval, what went into it, what Judge Wilken said, some of her thoughts. We'll get into what conference leaders are saying, what Nebraska Athletic Director Troy Dannon put out in a statement. Roster limits, right? That's been a big topic of conversation. The naming of a commissioner for the College Sports Commission, guy with some Major League Baseball ties. So we'll get into that. Some people think that this is a big win for college sports. Others say this is just a return to the status quo. We'll go over those thoughts, some changes maybe in what NIL could look like, how it will look, and some immediate challenges facing these teams, and plenty more. Again, 402-464-5685. So let's just start by diving into what it was that the Judge Wilken said in her final approval. Shout out to all the legalese experts who were posting different portions of the court documents and whatnot. I found a lot from Sam Ehrlich, who's at Boise State. He's doing a lot about college sports law at Boise State College of Business and Economics. Here's one of the pages here that Judge Claudia Wilken wrote. The settlement agreement here reflects compromises that were made in light of those legal precedents, which demonstrate that success at trial can mean the student-athlete compensation restrictions may be lessened, but not eliminated. Despite some compromises, the settlement agreement nevertheless will result in extraordinary relief for members of the settlement classes. If approved, it would permit levels and types of student-athlete compensation that have never been permitted in the history of college sports, while also very generously compensating Division I student-athletes who suffered past harms. The reaction of settlement class members has been very favorable, as only a small fraction of them have opted out or objected. The court will therefore grant final approval of the settlement agreement for the reasons below. A couple things I think stand out to there. Success at trial can mean the student-athlete compensation restrictions may be lessened, but not eliminated. So we're not talking about compensation getting lessened or eliminated, but the restrictions on them. That in and of itself is interesting. Judge Wilken is saying that we can't have, or the NCAA shouldn't have, won't be permitted to have a system with no restrictions, right? And when you think about the restrictions on student athletes right now after the House settlement, the key restriction is that $20.5 million number, which I think is what ended up being like 22% of some figure. I forget exactly which one, and I don't want to speak out of turn. But I think that 20.5 number is the target for the 2025 athletic year. But it's my understanding that that could go up because it's going to be based on a percentage, right? Kind of like a rolling cap, sort of like what you see with the NFL and the NBA especially, where they don't just say, this is the number that you have to operate within for the next 5-10 years. It changes on an annual basis, or at least, every couple years. So it's going to be interesting to see just how much the cap number goes up for these programs. Starting at $20.5 million, at 22%. I don't know exactly how they landed on that number. I think that's going to be a big help to student athletes, like Judge Wilken said. I think there are plenty of places that could pretty comfortably spend more than the $20.5 million, and quite a few places that could also struggle to reach the $20.5 million. So I think it's interesting that the restrictions are being lessened, but not eliminated. That tells you that Judge Claudia Wilken says, no, we need to try to institute something like a salary cap to try to make it fair. I would love to know your thoughts on that. 402-464-5685. The next part, despite some compromises, the settlement agreement nevertheless will result in extraordinary relief for members of the settlement classes. Yes, it will. These first couple of statements from Judge Wilken in this paragraph that I'm reading are an admission that this isn't perfect. This isn't everything everyone wanted to get accomplished, but at least it's something. It's not everything, and there's still, I think, a lot of questions even from Judge Wilken, because this is really without precedent, that the NCAA was able to go so long without paying its student athletes for use of their name, image, and likeness, that schools were not allowed to pay student athletes for their participation membership on their varsity teams. And I think there's a lot of questions about how this ties into the Sherman Act, which goes into a lot of the antitrust sort of exceptions and breaking up monopolies and whatnot. And I think as we continue to read what Judge Wilken had to say, she's treading lightly. She wants to make sure she does enough and pushes the system forward enough, but doesn't want to go too far. I think there's an element of caution. I don't want to say hesitancy. I would say of caution, of double checking, of putting together the best sort of settlement that we know it's going to be challenged in court, probably from all sides. But like the end of this paragraph said, most of the people involved can at least, kind of shake their head and nod their head and say, yeah, you know what? We'll take this. So let's move on here. If approved, it would permit levels and types of student athlete compensation that have never been permitted in the history of college sports. Yes, obviously that's referring to the paying of athletes directly by the schools, while also very generously compensating Division I student athletes who suffered past harm. Let's get into that part of things. So there's been a lot of questions for what this looks like. And my understanding from what I've read so far is that student athletes from the year 2016 on, for essentially the last decade now, the last 10 years of NCAA athletics, will be compensated to some degree. Here's kind of what the financials look like. This is from On3's article. I'm pretty sure it's Pete Nakos that put this out. Yeah, so Pete Nakos put this out, and he writes this. Instead of facing $20 billion in back damages, the NCAA and Power 5 conferences signed off on a 10-year settlement agreement that includes $2.776 billion in back damages. So down from $20 billion. Essentially, the NCAA and the Power 5 conferences will be paying like, what would that be? If I'm a math, like 10.5% of what they thought they were going to have to pay together, down from $20 billion to $2.776 billion. That's still a lot of money, and it's still going to be felt, because here's where that's going to come from. Nakos writes, roughly 60% will come from a reduction in distribution to institutions. And we're going to see exactly what that means in terms of TV media rights. How does that work? Or NCAA tournament units across different tournaments. Nakos continues to write, the NCAA is tasked with closing the other 40%, which will come through reducing operating expenses. Some of the top athletes in recent memory will make millions. I'm going to try to scroll through this Yahoo Sports article by Ross Dellinger pretty quickly here. So, yeah, Ross was reporting back in early mid-May, that the amount is going to be $2.776 billion. Ross also writes here, okay, so here we go. The NCAA is responsible for paying that $2.776 billion over a 10-year period, roughly $277 million. Annually, about 60% of that will come from a reduction in distribution to its schools. The NCAA is responsible for closing the 40% gap through other means, such as reserves, other net incomes, and a significant reduction in operating expenses of as much as $18 million annually. School distribution will also be reduced by about 1/5 over the decade period of the settlement, or about $160 million per year. The NCAA annually distributes more than $700 million to its members, most from ticket sales and television rights agreements of the men's basketball tournament. That's pretty interesting. Pardon me as I take a drink here for a sec. The NCAA tournament, the big cash cow, right? What will that look like moving forward? Just how many eggs will the NCAA have to put in that basket to try to make more money? We'll get into that here in just a minute. Power leagues are anticipating a reduction of $1 to $2 million per year in distribution, according to the document. However, the document notes the tab will be significantly larger and the timeline significantly shorter, with a loss in court, which appears to have not happened. So I think that the conferences got their way. Obviously, they'll have to pay out a bunch of money, but certainly not as much as they were anticipating. So then when you look at the NCAA side of things, they're the ones that are responsible for the back pay, not the schools. That's really interesting to me as well. I think that makes sense, because I think schools have enough on their plates as it is with trying to figure out how they're going to line up their $20.5 million in payments to current student athletes. And if they had to go back to 2016 and find a way to do value, I don't know how the NCAA is going to do this, but I do think it's good that they're taking that part at least off the plate of individual member schools who opt in, because the NCAA, as an organization, has more money obviously than any individual school. At least it should. When you look at the Power 5 schools that should be able to handle that, it's going to be really interesting to watch and see how that money gets distributed. If it's going to be an even sort of payout, or if there's going to be some sort of valuation scale from the NCAA. Back to Pete Nakos of On3 here. He writes, some of the top athletes in recent memory will make millions. Pete Nakos' understanding of this is that when the NCAA does pay out this money, it's not going to be even, not like college football, the video game, right, where every player got a check for the same amount of money. And that was that, clean, tidy, wash your hands of it. According to Pete Nakos, it sounds like different athletes will get different amounts of money. And on the one hand, I think that's fair. If there's an athlete who, drew more eyeballs, who was on more promotional material and more commercials, participated in more events, sure. I think that in an ideal situation, they should be compensated more for the use of their name, image, and likeness that they weren't able to profit off of before. But on the flip side of things, I go back to what Judge Wilkin wrote. The reaction of settlement class members has been very favorable, as only a very small fraction of them have opted out or objected. When I read that from Judge Wilkin, and I think just generally taking the temperature of the student athletes that are involved, the ones that will have agreed to this, Judge Wilkin's understanding is that these student athletes aren't looking for some, get rich quick scheme. They weren't planning to sue the NCAA for all they were worth. They just want what's fair. They just want what they earn. They're not looking to go overboard, be divas, and take, maybe more than they earn. When I hear Judge Wilkins say that the student athletes that have sued has been very favorable and there's only a small fraction opting out or objecting, that tells me that 95+% of the student athletes in the period from 2016 to 2025 would be cool just, getting that whatever it is check in the mail, that $1,100 check, that $1,500 check, whatever it might be, in the mail. Now, I think you always would like more money, right? And I think there's some that would deserve more than that. But I do think at the end of the day, for most student athletes involved in this case, it's more about the recognition. It's more about the making things right with the gesture itself. Like, okay, we knew we weren't going to get everything back, but at least we got a little something back. And I think it's a good step in the right direction. So if the NCAA wants this over with quick, they'll do one size fits all payments. If the NCAA wants to do it right, they'll take their time with it. But I think most people are just ready to be done. They have the decision. Let's get the money out there over the course of the next 10 years. Let's wash our hands of it and call it good. Definitely going to be interesting to watch. So thanks again to Sam Ehrlich from Boise State for doing a lot of posting. Obviously, the major websites are writing about it as well. So what else is there to get into with the House settlement? There's still a whole lot. So, the next step, potentially, this again from Sam Ehrlich that I shouted out before. He notes this. One interesting thing so far, Judge Wilkin is finding that it's unclear whether the revenue sharing cap is violative of antitrust law, but there isn't enough information, so she's not making a ruling in that regard either way. But since there isn't enough info, she says it doesn't matter. That's the part that I think I've always been most hung up on. Excuse me, when it comes to this settlement and when it comes to the $20.5 million mark, or the 22% cap, essentially, when it comes to revenue sharing with athletes. And even the NIL portion, which I know we'll get into here moving forward. But there's a lot going on there, right? Like I said, this is a pretty unprecedented situation, and Judge Wilkin doesn't know whether or not a non-collectively bargained cap will fly, if that'll stand up. My gut and my guess would be that piece is going to really get challenged in court on appeal, because what makes the salary cap work in basketball and football is that it's collectively bargained with the Players Association, is that the players had a say and the players got to agree to that percentage of money. in college sports, there's no players association, there's no union, there's no collective representation. So will that number stand up? My guess would be no, because not every athlete had a say, but on a different side of the same coin, does every athlete need a say, right? Do most athletes care what the cap is, what percentage they get, as long as they're getting something for their services, for their name, image, and likeness? I think, again, this could go one of two ways. Way number one is they could get challenged in court. A different judge might say, yeah, these people didn't have a say in it. This number was set through research, but by one person or by one small group of people. That's not enough input from those who are actually affected by this in terms of their economic earning potential, and that's the student athletes. So this isn't going to fly. This won't stand up. So you got to get rid of the cap. Schools will be able to pay whatever it is they want to pay out of their own pockets. The flip side of that is, it could get challenged, and someone would say, well, yeah, it's going to be pretty impossible to set up a collective bargaining agreement across the entirety of Division I athletics. And obviously this might end up working its way down to D2, D3 in the future, but for now, primarily Power 5 and Division I. I could see some judge saying that, the system in college is not set up to be conducive to unionization, to forming a players association, what have you. And so because of that, some judge might say, yeah, I think it's fair. I think that the number of the 22% is fair to both sides. Not only is it just a step in the right direction, I think that's a good target for universities and student athletes. I understand the methodology behind why you landed on that number. And so we're going to be okay with that number moving forward, even though when you look at, the player student athlete representation, there's been some, but they're not the ones helping set that number in the end. So I think that could go either way. I really do. And I think the other piece on top of that would be the NIL portion. We'll definitely get into that to start the next segment. But I could also say or see some judge saying, yeah, we're just telling schools what they can spend, that's more fair. We're telling them, hey, you have to pay, but we'll give you some relief because we knew this is a new system. But tell the student athletes, you also still have the opportunity to profit off of your name, image, and likeness outside of what your school is paying you. I think that the school making the payment is just kind of the baseline, the starter for being a student athlete, for allowing the university to put you on promotional material, to use your name, image, and likeness in various, social media posts or advertising or what have you. But I think I could see some judge saying, yeah, you're getting paid by your school, and that's what we promised you. If you want to make more money, it's on you, right? Go out there, be enterprising, be creative, and strike these deals. Prove to the market that you're worthy of having a deal done with you. If we capped what you could do with those outside companies, maybe that would be unconstitutional, holding back your earning potential. But I don't think that, they're supposed to be earning a living necessarily from being a college athlete. I think they're just supposed to be paid because it's the right thing to do after all these years. And then limiting the earning potential is more about the outside deals and putting a kibosh on those or limiting those, that I would say, the market says they're worth that much. You're telling them they can't make it. That's a problem. I don't have a better example off the top of my head. I'm sure I'll think of something. I'm planning to think of something by the time I know we'll discuss this Monday during On the Block and Old School. But I think it's an interesting step for the NCAA. Greg Byrne talked to Dan Wetzel of ESPN, and I'm going to find the exact quote. So yeah, Greg Byrne says, I tell our coaches and our students the three most significant events in the history of college athletics are: first, the NCAA's foundation; second, the adoption of Title IX and all the opportunities that were created because of it; and third, the House settlement. It was a landmark night for college athletics last night. We are in a new world. In a lot of ways, it's the same as the old world, but in so many ways, the storm might have just started, and we're in for a lot. Let's go ahead and take our first break of the hour right here. Still plenty more to come as we discuss the House settlement, roster limits. What do those look like? There's a commissioner for the College Sports Commission. And will this new world be one that's healthier for college sports in general, or will this just keep us at the status quo? I'm Austin Oerman. This is Ticket Weekends. More on the House versus NCAA settlement after this.
If you're a veteran, our nation has created a wide range of benefits to thank you for your service, but it can be difficult to navigate the process of determining eligibility, filing claims, appealing decisions, and securing the benefits you've earned. Speak to your county veteran service officer or the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs State Service Office to see what's available to you and your family. These services are 100% free, so visit veterans.nebraska.gov today. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Have you been injured in an accident and don't know where to turn? Do you need a lawyer you can trust to handle your case with professionalism and compassion? The attorneys at Liberty Law understand that a call to an attorney is a call for help. If you've been injured, we want to help you. Liberty Law's experienced attorneys are committed to the pursuit of justice for those injured. Contact us for a free consultation by calling 877-42-LIBERTY. Call Liberty Law and find out how we can help get you the compensation you deserve. Call 877-42-LIBERTY. Liberty Law Group. Trial attorneys you can trust.
Western Sand and Gravel is hiring for a variety of positions at their sand and gravel plants near Ashland. Apply today and receive a $2,500 hiring bonus. Available positions include plant operators, dredge operators, and shop service technicians. They offer great pay, health benefits, 401k, a wellness program, paid holidays, and paid time off. No matter your experience level, on-the-job training is available to help you build a rewarding career with Western Sand and Gravel. Start your career today. Visit westernsand.com.
Are you ready for a new opportunity? Check out Sandhills Global. Join a dynamic team where your skills are valued and your career can soar. We offer full-time positions with a 4.5-day work week, competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a positive work environment. From IT and marketing to sales and finance, we're looking for talented individuals just like you. Apply today at sandhills.jobs and take the first step towards an exciting future. That's sandhills.jobs. Don't wait, apply now.
Are you looking for an exciting new way to put your skills to work? Explore new career options in the fintech industry at Currency, a Sandhills Global company. We offer full-time positions in financial sales, compliance, operations, and other fields. We also offer a 4.5-day work week, an attractive benefits package, and opportunities for advancement. Put your motivation to work and grow with us at Currency. Visit gocurrency.com/careers to learn more.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Nominations for the Step Forward Awards are now open. These awards are the state's most prestigious awards for volunteerism, and we need your help to find outstanding volunteers from your region of the state. If you know a volunteer who deserves to be honored for their service, visit serve.nebraska.gov and click Nominate Now. Nominations must be submitted by June 1st. Paid for by Serve Nebraska, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Back to the Ticket weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back in, talking NCAA and the House settlement. I'm your host, Austin Oerman. Give me a follow on Twitter at Austin_Oerman if you would. Really appreciate that. Be a part of the show, 402-464-5685. Do you like the direction that things are heading in college sports now that the House settlement is approved? Would love to know your thoughts. Here's what the college sports commissioners, right, the conference commissioners, have been saying. Big thanks to Pete Thamel for putting this out here. We'll start with Tony Petitti, commissioner of the Big Ten. He says, we look forward to implementing this historic settlement designed to bring stability, integrity, and competitive balance to college athletics while increasing both scholarship and revenue opportunities for student athletes in all sports. How about Greg Sankey? The approval of the House Settlement Agreement represents a significant milestone for the meaningful support of our student athletes and a pivotal step toward establishing long-term sustainability for college sports, two of the Southeastern Conference's top priorities. As the journey to modernize collegiate sports continues, we remain focused on identifying and implementing innovative opportunities for our student athletes across all sports, while maintaining the core values that make collegiate athletics uniquely meaningful. Brett Yormark, Commissioner of the Big 12. As we enter this new era of college athletics, it's crucial we do so with structure, transparency, and the success of student athletes in mind. This settlement and new model will ensure that happens. I look forward to working alongside my colleagues to implement this new system that prioritizes fairness and opportunity for all student athletes and institutions. Yormark's statement sounds like the commissioner of a league that is fallen behind or that has been left behind. That's really interesting to me. Structure, right? Tell us the rules we're playing by. Transparency. Can we make sure that everyone's playing by the same rules? Then it goes to, prioritizes fairness and opportunity for all student athletes and institutions. I think that's a very Big 12 sounding statement from Brett Yormark. Then from Jim Phillips, this is a significant moment for college athletics that will provide unparalleled opportunities for student athletes. We look forward to implementing this new system, which offers much needed transparency and structure to create a more sustainable model for the long-term future of college athletics. Right? Okay. Again, from Jim Phillips, long-term future, transparency, structure. Jim Phillips and his statement sound like he's a little worried about the ACC falling behind. Let's move on to what Troy Dannon had to say. Put out a statement last night. He says, today's decision in the House case represents the latest step in the ongoing evolution of college athletics. Nebraska has spent the past year planning for this resolution and the ensuing changes ahead. We are supportive of this settlement and fully committed to participating in revenue sharing with our student athletes to best position Nebraska for future competitive success. That from Troy Dannon. Lots more to get to here, including roster limits, right? I think let's jump into that right now. Back to the article from Pete Nakos of On3. He writes, under the plan, athletes who had their positions cut will be eligible for reinstatement at school's discretion. It also permits athletes who leave or are not retained by their current school would keep grandfather status at a new school. That part is really interesting. Those first two sentences of this paragraph from Pete Nakos. If a student athlete was cut with a school or a program thinking, hey, we won't have room for you because of the settlement, if they talk to their coach and their coach says, yeah, fine, gets it cleared with the athletic department, says, yeah, I mean, we have space, we have money, we can take you back on. Sounds like there's a lot of student athletes who could get their spots on their teams back, right? I think that's good news for a lot of walk-ons, especially. I think that's where the best news is going to be. But then let's not forget, roster limits are still coming. So if you got cut over this offseason and maybe even next offseason, maybe there's going to be something in there that, allows you to be back on the team. But again, it's at the institution school's discretion. The other interesting part is, okay, you transferred thinking that you weren't going to have a spot at your old school. You keep your grandfather's status. Not saying you can't be cut, but now I think that's an interesting sort of twist, that if the only reason you left was because you were afraid of getting cut, these schools are allowed to pick you up without fear of punishment, right? Kind of like bonus roster spots. But we still have to keep in mind there are still proposed roster limits that seem like they're coming. Football still is at the 105 number, men's and women's basketball at 15. Baseball will now be at 34. Soccer will be at 28, softball at 25, and volleyball at 18. And now, of course, it's up to the schools to determine how many of those roster spots they provide payment or scholarship for, right? In football, there's been the 85 scholarship limit. That's gone. Schools can finance up to 105 scholarships to fill out its entire roster. I think that most teams in the Power Four are going to find a way to do that. I really do. I think that when you look at men's and women's basketball, I don't know how many schools will get to 15 full scholarships, especially if they want to be closer to that 105 number in football. Baseball at 34. I bet the majority of SEC teams will finance all 34 scholarships. In the Big Ten, I'm less certain. So maybe Nebraska, giving out 34 full scholarships could be an advantage in baseball and building out depth and development for the future. But I could also see potentially baseball falling back to, fourth or fifth in the pack at Nebraska and saying, you know what, if we have some spare money, sure, maybe we can toss you another scholarship, Will Bolt. But for this year, we can only give you 29. Or, it's been a tough year. You get 25 scholarships. That should be enough to, fill out your starting lineup, couple bench spots, your rotation, and most your bullpen, right? That's where I could see this heading. Soccer, we'll see. Softball, going to be really interesting to monitor. Again, I think the SEC, the Big 12, maybe the ACC will probably get all the way up to 25. Really curious about what the Big 10 will do there. And then volleyball in 18. I would guess Nebraska volleyball is going to consistently be north of 15 scholarships given out for volleyball. And it might even hit 18 on a relatively consistent basis, just because I think in the pecking order at Nebraska, it's number 2, which is still kind of crazy to think about just how much success volleyball has had. The fact that it's positioned itself to be number 2 at Nebraska, and tells you how much of a missed opportunity it's been for basketball on both sides and for baseball to position itself as the number 2 at Nebraska. They could have set themselves up to be financed, to be taken care of for a while, but football's going to get, I would guess, 105 in terms of scholarships. I'm going to guess volleyball gets all 18 more often than not. And then it's left to the basketball programs. And in the baseball program, the softball program, wrestling, right? Bowling, track, which has been really good as well, kind of fight for the table scraps, which now, competition hopefully makes these programs get better if they're competing for the same resources. But it has to be a healthy sort of competition, right? We talked with people about this around Give to Lincoln Day. As much as coaches and student athletes will want to fight for their own programs, sniping at each other over the same resources might not necessarily be healthy, which is where we can turn the conversation maybe to some NIL as we continue this discussion here during ticket weekends. So there was a commissioner named for the College Sports Commission. We'll get to that maybe in the end, but I do think it is probably time to talk about the NIL aspect of things. I'm going to shout out Myron Metcalf for a retweet of something here, and then Mitt Winter, who's a sports lawyer, sports attorney of sorts. So Myron Metcalf retweeted something that came from the College Sports Commission's website. Student athlete NIL deals. From the website, it says, starting June 7th, 2025, which, by the way, is today, NCAA Division I student athletes must report third-party NIL deals with a total value of $600 or more in the aggregate. The College Sports Commission will utilize NIL Go, an online portal built with assistance from Deloitte, to determine whether third-party NIL deals are made with the purpose of using a student athlete's NIL for a valid business purpose and do not exceed a reasonable range of compensation. Additional guidance on third-party NIL deal reporting will be provided to student athletes as their institutions are onboarded to NIL Go. Okay, what's the big deal about that statement? The first 4 words. Starting June 7th, 2025. A lot of schools thought they had till the end of June to get this money paid out or get contracts signed to get grandfathered in. According to the College Sports Commission, as soon as this settlement took effect, any deals that are signed have to be reported through this NIL Go platform to the College Sports Commission. Myron Metcalf tweets, "Woo, there will be lawsuits because if this ruling ruins the plan by a lot of institutions to get these payments out the door by June 30th, and now that changes to June 7th, we're going to have a few problems." 23, 24 days shouldn't make, that big a difference. Either you got the money or you don't. But the biggest point, I think, is when these deals were agreed to. That's the issue, because if you were, hoping to get a deal finalized by the end of June, so you didn't have to report it to say, no, we had this in before the settlement actually took effect, sounded like you were going to be in the clear. But according to the College Sports Commission, you got to report it starting today. And that would change a whole bunch of plans for institutions and in student athletes. Another piece on that then, Mitt Winter at Kenny Hertz Perry LLC, college athletics attorney, he tweets this: "Who wants to guess what percentage of college athlete third-party NIL deals will actually be reported starting today? From a practical perspective, how will the College Sports Commission even know if an athlete has done a deal? This is setting up to be messy and result in a lot of non-compliance." That part. What if schools were under the impression that they had till the end of the month and they choose not to report these deals because they think they're in the clear? It's not clear yet, right? Just because the College Sports Commission said this is when the deal has to be reported by, is that law? Where did they come up with that figure? Are they self-promoting, trying to get in on the action as early as they can? Or do they have legitimate, legal basis and precedent from the House settlement to say, no, as soon as this took effect, the new rules took effect? So that's definitely going to be interesting to monitor. And I think a way that I like this being phrased was from Matt Brown, who writes for Extra Points. He says, "So to me, there's really only one interesting question left. What happens first? The conclusion of the first batch of lawsuits challenging the core pillars of the House settlement structure, or lawmakers finally passing federal legislation that will settle many of the unanswered questions surrounding athlete compensation. Because until the courts affirm that some entity can say, no, these boosters cannot pay this right tackle $1.4 million and say it's for a social media marketing campaign, or until Congress says, shut up, these are the new rules now, any labor structure enacted on July 1st is written in sand, ready to be washed away at a moment's notice. You may have to follow the rules that are written in sand, or at least you're supposed to follow them, but you can't build permanent structures around them. Who's policing this? When do they actually get jurisdiction to say, hey, we're the lawmakers now? You gotta listen to what we say. Is it today? Is it, you have through June 30th in the Wild West, and then come July 1st, you gotta come home? No one knows. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these schools operate over the course of the next few weeks, what decisions they make, what decisions they don't make. Because it's great that there are new rules in place. And the College Sports Commission, I think, in a lot of ways, is supposed to be in charge of enforcing them. But the NCAA is still around, and maybe the NCAA is ceding some control to the College Sports Commission. It's one thing to have new rules. It's another to expect schools to play by them. As I believe, as Matt Brown goes on to write, every athletic director from the biggest P4 programs to the most modest of the low majors is going to continue to hustle for new revenue sources. Student experiences and academics and alumni relations are all important, but nothing happens if the payroll doesn't get met, and that means everybody needs more cash. Virtually every coach or staffer working for a coach is going to work to find loopholes to get around the salary cap. I put in air quotes like he did. Or they're just going to bulldoze right through them and dare anybody to do anything about it. Nobody gets promoted for exceptional NCAA bylaw compliance. You keep your job if you win. Winning takes good athletes, and good athletes cost money. Nobody is going to be scared into diligent cap compliance because of a Charlie Baker press release. Sorry, Charlie. That part. Nobody gets promoted for exceptional NCAA bylaw compliance. If schools don't know who's in charge, if schools don't know when these rules actually take effect, what incentive do they have to follow the rules? Because they trust that other schools are going to? Yeah, no, not going to work, not going to fly. Still plenty more to get to. We'll wrap up this discussion, get you set up for Lincoln Youth Football next on Ticket Weekends.
Grandma and Grandpa, Mom and Dad, then the kids, and now the grandkids. Judson Irrigation has provided lawn sprinkler system design, installation, repair, and service to 4 generations. They're just like members of the family. Loyalty, trust, service. It's what you deserve and expect from Judson Irrigation.
Keep summer green. Call Judson Irrigation 402-420-6277 or judsonirrigation.com.
Load up on meat and more this spring at The Mercado by Certified Piedmontese with great selections of T-bones, tomahawks, ribeyes, filet mignon, brisket, sirloin, and so much more. The Mercado has locations at 84th and Havelock, 30th and Yankee Hill, and now 85th and Old Cheney in Lincoln, where you can have $2 draft beer every Thursday night from 4 to 8 p.m. and half-price espresso drinks on Fridays from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Get to The Mercado today for the best meat in town.
Early break.
I'm not a dog expert. No, it's not. I don't mind dog. I'm not a dog expert, though.
He does talk to chickens, though. It's
I
very
talked to
endearing.
chicken. Talked to another chicken this past week.
Talk to chickens.
What was that? Do it again.
With Steve Sipple, Jake Sorensen, and Bill Bush from 6 to 9 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Play ball!
Ready for summer fun and ballpark vibes? Bring your pack to Haymarket Park for a thrilling season of Lincoln Salt Dogs baseball and unleash the fun. From May through August, the Lincoln Salt Dogs will be playing and the park will be popping with all the food, drinks, and fun you need for the perfect night out. Grab your friends, family, and coworkers and make plans now. Visit saltdogs.com to secure your tickets. Come on out to the park and unleash the fun. Play ball! Pitch the perfect idea for a family outing or date night with tickets to the next Salt Dogs game. Nothing says summer fun like an action-packed evening at Haymarket Park. Come root for the home team with a hot dog and a cold drink. Plus, visit saltdogs.com to learn about special events and promotions, including group discounts. Don't miss out on the thrill and excitement of a Salt Dogs win. Visit saltdogs.com to reserve your tickets today.
The Captain with Vershawn Jackson, Terrell Farley, and Jake Bakoven.
I'm looking at a mirror. I'm sitting right next to him.
So I was up at the facility earlier today. I had the opportunity to talk to the 2025 Nebraska Cornhuskers. But man, those dudes were locked in. They were asking questions. I saw the intentionality. I saw the focus. I saw the hunger. And when I'm leaving the meeting, before any of those guys got up, they all waited for Dylan Raiola to address them. And he addressed them and gave the tentative schedule of like what they're going to be. This is Friday. They're free. They're done for the week. And they're talking about the things that they got to do. And that gave me chills.
Back to the Ticket weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back in. One final segment here of Ticket Weekends for now with me, Austin Oerman. Still lots to parse through when it comes to the House settlement. Saw a couple more really interesting tweets that we'll get to here. Again, want to shout out Sam Ehrlich from Boise State for his work on this. He's been a big resource here for this show. Seems like he's doing some pretty good work. He posted this, released by the new College Sports Commission, a timeline of how the settlement will be implemented, including key dates for the designated student athletes who will not count toward roster limits. All right. So, according to the College Sports Commission, June 6th, 2025, settlement approved. Settlement-related NCAA rules are effective as adopted by the NCAA Division I Board on April 25th, 2025. Okay, so according to this College Sports Commission, a lot of these rules were approved and adopted back in April, so they've already taken effect with the passing an agreement to the settlement. Okay, that's really interesting. June 11th, 2025, NIL Go portal launches. That would give you Sunday the 8th, Monday the 9th, Tuesday the 10th. So Wednesday the 11th is when supposedly that portal is going to go live. Okay, so do schools have 4 days now to get NIL deals done before they have to report them? Or do they have to be ready to report them and officially go to the portal, the NIL Go portal? Too many dang portals. We need a new word. The NIL Go portal at the very least on Wednesday. Okay, so here's June 15th. That's the opt-in deadline for non-defendant schools. the ones that weren't named, weren't a part of the lawsuit, to opt into fully committing to revenue sharing. So that's coming up a week from Sunday is the opt-in deadline. July 1st, that's the first day for direct institutional revenue sharing payments to student athletes. Okay, interesting. So in about a month, that's when those checks can officially get to student athletes from the schools. About a week later, on July 6th, opt-in schools must designate student athletes permitted by the settlement to remain above roster limits. Okay, so if you're Nebraska and, some walk-ons, excuse me, we're going to leave, some walk-ons were not going to be a part of the team, Nebraska will have until July 6th to say, hey, these 25 or 30 walk-ons that we would have had that are above the 105, we are designating them as the players that are getting grandfathered in. Here are the 105 that if you made us cut down, we would keep. Here are the extra 30 that we get to keep, that we're designating as being grandfathered in, because finding a new school or losing their spot on our team would have been too harsh a punishment, as decided by Judge Claudia Wilkin. So that's going to be really interesting. Start of 2025-26 academic year, so coming up in August. With the exception of the designated student athletes, fall sports must be at or below roster limits by their first day of competition. First day of competition. That, to me, reads as if you can go through fall camp and through fall practice with more than the 105 for football or more than the 18 for volleyball. But then probably the night before, you got to say, okay, here's our final roster. You'd have to have those conversations with players, and then you lose your practice players because they're not a part of the team anymore. That's going to be really interesting to monitor. If it's the first day of competition, meaning, when Nebraska takes the field against Cincinnati on August the 28th, is that the day that we have to know the 105 for Nebraska that would have made the roster? Or does Nebraska need to get down to 105 by the start of fall camp? That's going to be interesting, because to me, it sounds like you can carry more up until the day of the first game and delay those cuts as long as possible, but we'll have to see. And then by December 1st, 2025, with the exception again of designated student athletes, winter and spring sports must be at or below roster limits by their first day of competition or December 1st, whichever is earlier. So for men's basketball, for women's basketball, they would have to be cut down before December 1st. But for baseball and softball, wait, no. Let me take this back. So yeah, it would be first day of competition for men's basketball, women's basketball, winter sports like that. But for spring sports, it would be December 1st, not just the day of the first game, because basketball will obviously start, late October into early November. So you're not going to give them until December to carry out their playing with their roster. They got to know going into the first game. So that's going to be really interesting to monitor for baseball, for softball, outdoor track, soccer, I suppose, as well, maybe lacrosse across the country as well, is that you won't have your spring practices to determine who you want to keep or who you want to take on your roster above and beyond the designated student athletes. You'll have to know by December 1st. That's when your roster is going to have to be set by. That's like 2 months in advance instead of night before. And not that, it really makes that big a difference, I guess, for the sports that will be able to take it up to the night before, because for football, if you're guys number 103, 104, 105, you're probably not going to make a huge difference on the season. But for baseball, where you're down from, being able to carry, 40 players down to 34, or for softball, where you're down to 25, or volleyball, where you're down to 18. Again, maybe it's just, numbers difference, but I would guess that those 6 fewer spots in those last 6 spots in baseball would mean a little bit more than the final 6 spots in football, just by virtue of there being fewer people on the baseball team to begin with. So that's going to be really, really interesting to monitor how that works. Excuse me. So let's hit one more tweet here from Mitt Winter before we start putting a bow on this to get you set up for the Lincoln Youth Football Show. Mitt Winter retweeted the NCAA PR letter from Charlie Baker, who's the NCAA president, and he found one specific paragraph here from Charlie Baker. The paragraph reads, with these changes in place, including release from future litigation on these subjects for the next decade, the foundation of college sports is stronger than at any point in years. The NCAA can increase focus on reforming clunky governance structures and, most importantly, prioritizing fair competition, academics, and student-athlete well-being. Mitt Winter says, I hope Charlie Baker doesn't actually believe what's written here about future litigation relating to the House settlement terms completely being released for the next 10 years. Yeah. I don't think Judge Wilkin would have approved a settlement. I don't know if it would even be legal to say, yeah, you can't sue us for the next 10 years because we tried our best. This isn't a perfect settlement. There's still plenty to work through. And so I don't think it would be fair to student athletes to not be able to sue for more of the if they feel like they're worth it. So if you're Charlie Baker, did you misread it? Did your inner circle misread it and you put out the statement anyways? Or if you're Charlie Baker and you see that your organization is on the hook for $277 million in change in payouts on average over the next 10 years, $2.776 billion that you are owing in back pay to previous student athletes. Do you write this to try to dissuade people from suing you? Did you write this to try to save yourself money? Because maybe you're banking on, hey, these student athletes don't have the best legal representation. It's a new system to them. So if we write that they won't be able to sue us for the next 10 years, how many lawsuits will we prevent? Or at the very least, will we prevent some lawsuits for a few years? Give ourselves time to come up with a plan and a messaging sort of philosophy that can maybe dissuade people from suing for even more. So that's going to be really interesting to see, because according to Charlie Baker, if they can't be sued, that's huge for the NCAA. I mean, they've been in court for most of the last 5 years, and certainly more beyond just the House settlement. So I can understand Charlie Baker trying to put this statement out if it's like, hey, you can't sue us, you can't do it anymore, this is your settlement, you're good. And I think a lot of people would go for that, would say, oh yeah, I got what I wanted, we got what we wanted, a judge ruled, so we're probably in the clear. But what Mitt Winter is saying is that no, not necessarily. I mean, you should still be able to sue the NCAA under the terms of the settlement. And, if you think you're worth more, if you didn't think you got what you earned, what you were owed, you can still go after them. So it's going to be really interesting to see how many student athletes and their families and attorneys, despite the House settlement, still try to move forward and get even more. All right, I'm going to stop talking for a little bit. There's a lot more to read, a lot more to break down here for the House versus NCAA settlement. I'm going to keep reading up because there's so much to get to. But for now, we'll have the Lincoln Youth Football Hour and then the Power Hour with Todd Euler. Special guest Rusty Bumgardner. It's going to be a really fun one coming up at 1. Thanks for tuning in. Lincoln Youth Football takes the air next.